All right, let's talk about this mess because I'm feeling real justified. I'm bringing my notes because I have an entire hit list. So let's go through the highlights because this reunion was really crazy and not in a good way. And I honestly wouldn't have gotten through it if it weren't for AD because she was the only person up on that stage that made me feel like I wasn't absolutely losing my goddamn mind. Shout out to AD. This was her face while Tyler and Ashley were talking, and my god, she said it all. This is definitely the look and smile you give your friend who is going through very much a canon event. You know you can't save her, you just have to sit there and watch. All right, and we're gonna get right into it with the married couples because this was honestly the hardest part of the show for me to watch. I don't think either of the couples that got married this season should have gotten married this season, and I'll make my case for that. I do think the case is obvious in the case of Tyler and Ashley. It is really difficult to watch a woman make her bed with a man like this and then lie in it, like really double, triple, quadruple down on a man like this. You always think you're the exception until you realize like 10, 20 years down the road that you're not. And the most telling part for me, honestly, is how much this man has cooled off on her and love bombing her and all this stuff. The tattoo, the chest tattoo conversation, that was awkward and painful to watch because that's something that he like promised her on their honeymoon and like made a huge deal out of it. Now that it's been a year later, he's not only still hasn't done it, but he also seems like he's waffling back and forth on it. He's like, oh, we'll talk about it. Like, I'm still open to it. Like, well, I thought you were gonna do it. I think he's already trying to weasel his way out of, like, you know, something super permanent on his body because I feel like he has her hooked in with other things. Also, whenever she was saying like, oh, you know, I could go out there and like pop my shit and find another man. I don't know if people caught this, but he was saying like, no, you can't. You can't find another man. Excuse me? Like, she absolutely could. You could just tell they were both lying through their teeth. Like, she sounds very coached. The kind of words he was choosing and like, I don't know, just made it very clear like he was trying to cover up the whole situation and just like blow over it. They also said in their Entertainment Tonight interview that the way that they deal with the situation is just by blocking people. He's literally got her in an echo chamber. He's got her coached. When asked about his favorite thing about Ashley, he says, my favorite thing about her is that she loves me unconditionally and always reassures me that she's not going anywhere. And this is like the abuser loop that he's got her in. He's got her completely locked in. And at this point, she's just stuck in his web of lies and he's just spinning it even tighter around her. Very, very painful to watch. I hated this entire segment. And I'm going to say the same thing about these two. Painful to watch. I dislike Garrett more than I ever thought I could after this reunion. And the way he was like, we got your back, bro, to Tyler. He's just very much a boy's boy. Like, he's not real. Like, he'll just take the guy's side in anything. Thought it was really creepy the way he addressed like Nick with the whole Hannah situation. He was like, you were very patient. Like, I wouldn't have say the same for myself. Like, it's kind of low-key threatening. Like, what do you mean by that? Also, Nick had the option to walk away the entire fucking time if he really didn't like it. So it's super weird that he was like, oh, like, you're basically a saint for dealing with a woman who didn't like sugarcoat everything for you and called you out on your lies and your bullshit. Just a super weird way to address that. The reunion producers were definitely giving these two the golden couple treatment, and they just avoided addressing the whole ex fiasco, which I will remind you that Taylor said, we have receipts, that Taylor said the text that he sent back to his ex, which he lied about texting her in the first place. She said that that text was more friendly than she would have liked to see. People are just blowing over it like, oh, well, he just didn't know any better. Like, no, he's also a grown man and he should have known better. And if he didn't, then he's maybe not ready to get married. Like, I don't know. It also broke my heart watching her talk about them having to move basically to DC, even though that's not what she wants to do. And she's really sad being away from her family. It seems like he completely went back on his word and was like, no, it's too hard for me without my family. And then they say they compromised, but it's not a compromise to move 1 hour away from his parents and like across the country from hers. That's not really a compromise. A compromise would be living in like the Midwest, but I digress. All right, let's get into the individuals. As far as Leo, he's definitely giving me like doesn't know how to be a human vibes. And I don't say that in like a cute way. I say it in like, I'm not diagnosing him, obviously, but he may have some pretty sociopathic tendencies. Whenever he would bring up his family, which I don't know if y'all remember, but a lot of them, like basically his entire family, died of cancer. But whenever he would bring that up, he just had absolutely no affect or emotion about it. Almost seemed like he was bringing it up in the same way as like the money thing. And he obviously thinks he's a little bit of like a Bruce Wayne type character, a little bit. He gave me real bad vibes like right away. And I think that he's doing this whole like, I'm really good friends with Brittany thing for good press / PR. I think he's been trying to like redeem his image on like social media, and like now he's like playing into it and he's acting like really humble and stuff. But to me, there still is just no kind of like life behind all of his actions or words. It just seems like that's very like calculated and very intentional. He just gives me the worst vibe. As far as Brittany, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really have like anything to say about her. In the kindest, most well-meaning way, like I do not care about her. She seems like a nice girl. I don't know why she's still talking to and like hanging out with this guy, especially when like he does little weird power moves on her, like always takes a drink of her drink. And the fact that she prefaced it with, oh, Leo is gonna like kill me for saying this is also weird. Anyway, I hope she finds what she's looking for. I wish more women like her would decenter men and make something else like their goal, because I really feel like she has a lot of potential. I feel like for a lot of women, this like need to be validated by men or marriage or even just wanting to start a family, which is really sad. But I do think it just keeps them from like being able to focus really on themselves and like really do what they want to do. She seems very like tenacious and like organized and like well-meaning. Seems like she knows what she wants. I just would love to see her put that energy towards herself instead of like the validation of random men. Let's get right into it. Regarding this journal entry, I have two things to say about that. One, I see a lot of people coming at this from like a Hannah was invading Nick's privacy standpoint. I want to remind y'all that he said very clearly during the reunion that he does not care. He did not care if Hannah read this. He left that journal out all over the place. He did not care if she found it. He did not care if she read this. So you guys can quit writing so hard for him. The man himself clearly doesn't care. Second of all, let's not pretend like if Nick would have found this and this was in Hannah's journal, let's not pretend like the internet would not be up in flames trying to burn the woman alive right now. If Nick was the one to disclose this information, everyone would be on Hannah's neck right now. But because it's Nick, nobody cares. You guys have decided to make a saint out of him and nothing's going to change your mind. That's really annoying because this actually explains a lot about his behavior. So explains why he didn't talk about the fact that he wasn't attracted to Hannah on camera. And he only did that behind her back. Which again, people are making him out to be a saint for that. But he's not a saint for that. He was doing a calculation in his head the whole time of if I go on camera and I say that I'm not attracted to her physically, that's not going to go over well with all the women watching this show. If I treat this woman outright like crap, the women watching the show are not going to like that. So I think you guys do not know who the real Nick is at all. For y'all to be standing him all over the internet, you guys don't know the real person. Once again, I just promise you that y'all would not take as kindly to this if this was Hannah's note in Hannah's journal that Nick found. Y'all would be like, good on him for exposing her. Do not get me wrong. Hannah is not a likable character. She's not a likable person. In fact, I think she's a narcissist, and I have a lot of things to say about her behavior regarding Marissa. But that's because the power dynamic and the power differential in that relationship is different than the power dynamic between Hannah and this man. And I really, really hate how much benefit people are giving him. Because this is actually crazy. This is exactly the type of behavior y'all were condemning from Trevor last season, from Jessica last season, right? Oh, the people are just going on the show to be famous, like they're not taking it seriously. But now, all of a sudden, because Nick said he wants to be one of the most famous participants on Love is Blind, y'all are like, well, obviously everybody goes on there for fame. Like, Can we be serious for 1 second? Like, which is it? Do we want people to take the show seriously or not? Or is everybody just on there to be famous? Because that's not fair to the other contestants. The goal of going on Love is Blind should be to find love. Like, that's the primary goal. If this was like a goal-setting journal entry, then clearly his heart was not even in the right place going on this show. And I'm also confused as to why everybody's acting like it's better somehow that he said things about her physical appearance on camera or off camera. Meanwhile, she aired out her concerns on camera, because Jimmy did that last season and everybody villainized Chelsea. It just sometimes feels like misogyny is y'all's guiding light and not actually like trying to get to the bottom of things. It feels like what's really guiding some of y'all's commentary is misogyny. Jamie went on camera last season and said Chelsea looked nothing like Megan Fox. Everyone was like, well, that's fair. She lied. But when Hannah goes on camera and says, yeah, it's a little weird because he doesn't look like Henry Cavill at all, people are like, what a bitch. It doesn't really add up, you know? It just seems like some of us are riding a little bit too hard for Nick when he's really giving you no reason to. He's not a good man. His intentions for coming on the show were not pure. And it affected his behavior. It affected how he interacted with Hannah. Some of us are doing just a little bit too much, giving him the benefit of the doubt, putting words in his mouth when he didn't say any of those words. He said what he said. And once again, even regarding the things he said in his journal, he very clearly said when he was sitting on that couch, he said, I did not care if Hannah read that. And he said, I don't care who knows. Like, I left that journal out in the open. Now she's a villain. He also said he didn't want y'all to be mean to her. And for some reason, that doesn't apply when it comes to believing his words. That doesn't apply. The fact that he didn't care that somebody read it doesn't apply, because the only thing we're doing is trying to make a villain out of this woman. And I just want y'all to notice that. I just want y'all to see that what's guiding that conversation is misogyny. It's the fact that we've made it okay for men to be able to have their cake and eat it too. For Nick, that means like constantly flipping back and forth between acting like he knows nothing to actually being very calculated with his actions. And it just feels so crazy making to me that everyone is acting like she's some kind of a 43-year-old groomer and he's like a high school child when he is 2 years older than her. And the only thing that she was ever trying to do was just trying to get some answers out of him and like trying to get on the same page, just trying to see if they're on the same page or not. And he kept saying one thing and doing another, which is crazy making. Again, I don't care if she's a good person or not in y'all's eyes. Like, she's not a good person in my eyes. But I still think that two things can be true at once. He could have been treating her in a poor and calculated way as to avoid making himself look bad, which was also painful and crazy making to her. Even though she herself may not have been a good person, but he is not a saint in this situation. And people are making him seem like he's a saint, and it's very frustrating to watch. I think part of the reason this reunion felt so crazy making to a lot of people is because at this point, it seems like the producers know that they are picking the worst and most diabolical men to come on this show. Because they literally let Ramses sit there and lie through his teeth about, I didn't give her an ultimatum. You literally did. You said sex has to feel good for me. That's the bottom line. There's literal receipts giving her an ultimatum and like leaving it at that. They didn't hold any of these men to the fire at all. They just said, yep, okay, glad we got that out of the way. Good job. And they didn't ask him any of the real questions about, you know, why did your anti-military stance only come out of the pods and after the honeymoon? Why was that all of a sudden so important to you? It just feels like they didn't ask him about anything actually important or that he would have actually had to be held accountable for, because I don't think that they want people to realize like how deliberately diabolical some of these characters are and were always meant to be. Yeah, and I think this was all of us when Marissa's mom got to say her piece and he just had to sit there and take it because he knows she's right. Last thing I want to address here is this dynamic. I would just advise, as a white woman myself, as an immigrant white woman who didn't come to America until I was about 12, who has experienced this dynamic with white women, even though I am also white. Unfortunately, in a racial caste system like America has, the layers really are infinite. And you come to understand that as an immigrant woman. Like, white women definitely treat you a little bit differently than they treat each other. Because of that, this dynamic jumped out to me. Marissa was trying really hard to have Hannah's back because of the way that Hannah has worked her friends over in private, including Katie. I hope that it's very clear why I'm framing Hannah's dynamic with Marissa differently than I'm framing it with Nick, because their power dynamic is different than her and Nick's power dynamic. And white women, we need to realize that we have all the opportunity and all the capacity of treating Black women and women of color the same way that white men treat us. If we're not aware and cognizant of these things, then they're going to continue to happen. So as white women, I think we need to pay special attention to dynamics like this. I think it's really important to be aware of like this kind of one-sided dynamic, just to make sure that that's not something that you're perpetuating as a white woman. And I think it's also important for Black women to see that no matter what somebody is saying to you, like in private, how they're going to act in public is always the real way that they feel. As women, we want to hold men to that. So as white women, we should be willing to be held to that as well. And Black women should not be afraid to call us out on that and to be like, hey, I stood up for you. Like, why didn't you say something? Because while I believe that Hannah is narcissistic, like in a lot of ways, like I think she's high on that NPD scale, I think that being part of a privileged class kind of puts you on that track, unless you're actively trying not to be. I just wanted to throw that out there so that we are all aware about it, keeping an eye out for these kinds of dynamics, because this really does happen. And I just want to say too that anybody that you can ever describe as having been mean to you, like when Marissa says like, oh, Hannah's been really mean to me before, cut them off immediately. Like, that's not a good friend or person, because they don't know how to emotionally regulate themselves. There's never any need to be mean to someone, but especially someone you call a friend, especially when it sounds like it was kind of out of nowhere. Like, it seems like Marissa was like thrown off by it, and like that was something that they had to work through. It also seems like Hannah harassed Katie for a long time about the Nick conversation. Katie was also like really walking on eggshells around Hannah. So I want y'all to know, like, women like this are not your friend. I go easy on her in the male-female dynamic because there is a power imbalance. But when there's a power imbalance on Hannah's side, she definitely has used it to her advantage. And that's how you can tell whether somebody's a good person or not. How they use their power. Big difference. But not a lot of people will get it, and that's okay. And I also just want to address her saying that, you know, she went back to Ramses and stuff for like physical intimacy and whatnot. I just want to say that that's neither here nor there. Like, this is why as women, everybody needs to work on internal validation, like being able to really validate yourself, and decentering men so that you don't end up embarrassing yourself like this. Because I really do think that the only reason she kind of wanted to put that out there and like put it on blast is for that kind of validation. Like, see, he still had sex with me. Like, that's not, men will always have sex with you. If you ever want to come back to them after like a highly emotional, high strung like relationship and have sex with them, they will always let you. They're like never gonna say no to that, because they know you're gonna be trying extra hard to like impress them and like make them regret it and all this stuff. They'll gladly take that and then still turn around and be like, all right, you're gonna go now. It's not gonna make them care about you. But a lot of women think that it means something when a man will like take you back for sex. It means nothing. Men will always do that. That's literally always an option. Steven is basically every single unintelligent yet somehow extremely diabolical, run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road scumbag. He went on a show supposedly to find love, and the very first time he was ever away from his wife-to-be, he decided to send dirty messages back and forth with a woman that he's never met in real life. Meanwhile, the woman that he has met in real life, drop dead gorgeous, willing to put up with all of his stupid yapping, he just couldn't help himself. And guys like this never can, because their problem is that they're insecure. The problem is never you as a woman when it comes to cheating. The problem is this man is insecure, and he could rightfully tell that he was with a woman that's way out of his league. And what insecure men always do in that instance is cheat on you. So that's what he did. It's really not complicated. And they all have the same playbook, right? It's the same stupid story every time. they always have like some kind of an audacity with it too, where they're like, after telling you how badly they've screwed you over or cheated on you or whatever, they also make a bunch of jokes about it and like can't wait to like have the whole situation be over with, which is really disorienting because they're not showing the remorse that's called for in a situation like that. They're just like being really heartless and just like waiting for it all to blow over, which is really cruel. It always comes out in the same kind of way, like, you know, there's trickle truthing, there's the, oh, I deleted it because I just couldn't look at it anymore, and oh, I'm such a horrible person, and oh, I should just off myself or whatever. I don't deserve anything, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's always the same song and dance while just a beautiful, stunning, intelligent woman sits there dumbfounded that this happened to her. But truthfully, I think Monica should have walked away from him when she first just couldn't stand him. Even on the honeymoon when they all met up, he was just sitting there talking about how like women are just gonna come out of the woodwork wanting to give him blowjobs and stuff. That should have been enough. That should have been enough of a reason to call it off. Like, why are you even thinking about that? Like, who cares? You're just talking to hear yourself talk at that point, and also you have nothing interesting to talk about other than what might hypothetically happen to your dick in a few years. Like, that's terrible. And women are just too afraid to like not give men the benefit of the doubt. When she first was trying to address all of his yapping, like, yeah, you know, it just kind of feels like there's no space for me in the conversation. Like, yeah, it's probably because he's not listening to anything you say. He's literally just thinking about what's the next like stupid thing he's gonna say. He's just waiting for you to be done talking. And women will be like, I know you're just so passionate. Like, no, he's just stupid and he's not listening to you. Like, stop giving them the benefit of the doubt like that, because that's how it happens. And then you're dumbfounded. Don't be dumbfounded. The man's been telling on himself the whole time. Like, this has been foreshadowed by him. Let him go. Just let him go at the first sign. Just be like, you know what? I don't think so. I'm not feeling it. Like, it's totally okay to break up with somebody for that. Just throwing that out there, FYI. That's really good to consider when you first start, you know, dating somebody or like talking to somebody. Like, pay attention to what they talk about. Like, pay attention, be like, okay, like when I bring this dude around my friends, like, am I gonna be embarrassed? Are my friends like accomplished men and women that are gonna have to sit there listening to this dude talk about who might want to suck his dick 5 years down the road? Like, come on, it's okay to not want that. You know, I'm just throwing that out there in case women don't know. Cause, oh, and he definitely wrote her that letter just so he could bring it up at the reunion and talk about it. That is absolutely what happened. Make no mistake, that is absolutely what happened. I'm so glad that Monica called him out on that. Like, that was maybe my favorite moment of the show. The fact that she didn't hold back on that. Like, yes, good for you. All right, and the last person on apparently the most diabolical men of all time couch is Mr. Drake over here, Tim. Do you see this? This is called an expression of contempt. And if a man ever looks at you like this, that's not good. Because there's a lot hidden underneath this expression, and none of it means anything good for you. You're in a relationship with a person who's looking at you like this. Behind this expression lies a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, and possibly a really dangerous person. Again, I can't diagnose anybody, but to me, I see a lot of narcissistic traits in Tim. And when a narcissist feels contempt towards you, they typically will act out or try to do something to get like a reaction out of you, and that can be very dangerous to you. So keep an eye out for this expression when you're dating or just around people in general. If somebody's looking at you like this, that means they feel contempt towards you. The other thing I'm going to say about Tim, and this is not me saying anything about his sexuality, because straight men can do this too, but Tim doesn't like women. For whatever reason, he doesn't like women. He does not enjoy women. Tim is a male pick-me, and a male pick-me still wants to be picked by men. Garrett falls into this camp as well. But Tim is definitely a male pick-me. The only time his face ever lit up was when he was talking about the boys and how they've been hanging out and how they've been, you know, doing stuff together. He definitely seems the most affected by the friendships that that he made, which is great. But I think he likes men, as a general, a whole lot more than women. Other than that, I'm just gonna say this is not really a safe man. And while I completely understand why he would say what he said about being stereotyped and things like that, like, he genuinely does not seem like a happy or secure person. He seems like somebody that's always trying to get out ahead of the next thing, like he's already insecure before anything even happens. The scariest part of that, these types of men take everything personal. The rules that apply to you don't necessarily apply to them. And I was really glad when Alex called him out on that, and she said, when you need space, you're just gonna take your space. You get to take your space, and like, it's non-negotiable. But when I was telling you that I need space, you chose to completely disrespect that and like drive me to my edge. She's absolutely right. Like, he definitely didn't respect her wish for space, but when he needed space, he just literally went and like got another hotel room. And then it also turns out like she didn't hit him. Yes, it's not nice, but she called him a little bitch. Like, that's not that bad. Like, not like she said something like super diabolical. Like, and another giveaway for him was when he was like, y'all asked men to take you seriously, and why would you belittle me like that? Like, that's scary. That's why I say, like, he doesn't like women, because you just go from talking to Alex to generalizing all women. Y'all ask men to take you seriously. Like, oh, okay, so like, you're telling on yourself that you don't take women seriously. Like, it's conditional for you to take women seriously and treat them as human beings. But you don't want to be belittled. And then it makes sense that he feels belittled because he doesn't respect women. So like, when a woman steps up to him, he automatically feels belittled. Right? And that's why I say he's more into men. He's way more into men's approval than he is into women. Again, that's not me speculating on his sexuality. That's just me calling it like it is. It has nothing to do with sexuality. It has everything to do with the patriarchy and his role in that. And of course, we have the man of the hour, Nikki D, just the most unlikable, mediocre man, who is every bit as bad as some of us thought he was. And I think he was definitely only nice to Hannah because he got it in his head that he's gonna be one of the most famous contestants on Love is Blind or whatever. He wanted to come off likable, but he was talking shit about her behind her back. He was calling her a grenade and things like that, which in my opinion is worse than saying it to the camera, because at least then you're standing down on what you said. But he obviously wasn't attracted to her and didn't want to even talk about like sleeping together and like all this stuff. She even said like he's not that great in the bedroom because he seems uninterested. Just as bad, if not worse, than saying it to a camera, because then the other person feels crazy. They're like, okay, but you're saying one thing and you're doing another. People made fun of her for saying this, but she is very direct. And he's very avoidant, so it was never going to work. But again, he was never going to admit that, which is disturbing. Like, it's crazy making. As far as these two, Alex and Monica, I wish them nothing but the best. I really just wish that women had more of like fuck it attitude when it comes to dating. I really think that these two both kind of overstayed past a lot of red flags, and I think they would have felt a lot better if they would have just left. Instead of waiting for like the red flags to actually manifest into terrible behavior, like, I wish we would normalize it a lot more for women to just leave, to just be like, I don't like it. I don't like how you're speaking to me. I don't like how you're treating me. I don't like the things that you have to say. I don't like the kind of pressure you're putting on me here and here. So I'm going to walk away, because I know what you said. You said what you said in the pods and like whatever, but that I have to match that now with your actions, and it's not matching up. I've said this before and I'll say it again, but this show sets women up, especially women, to be love bombed by these men who plan on following up on absolutely none of it. Once they're out of the pods and once they're done with the honeymoon, a lot of these men just let loose. And the women are like, oh, well, I guess I have to deal with this. You don't. You can just walk away. And at the end, you're going to be a lot better off for it, as you're not going to wait for a man to drive you crazy and then cheat on you or dump you still at the end of the day. It does you no good to stay where you don't feel like you're welcome, or you're being treated well, or like where you feel like there's any fuckiness going on. Just leave. This show and this setup, in a way, really goes to show that it's not at all that serious to any of these men. So like, I hope women are seeing this. I hope women are seeing that while women sit there and put up with like over the top behaviors, really weird kind of like cold behaviors like Tim was displaying towards Alex. No award for that. There's only something worse at the end of that rainbow. There's really no like prize for putting up with mistreatment. All that means is that that person now knows it's okay to mistreat you, and they're gonna take it a step further every single time. At the end of the day, you're gonna feel crazy, you know? And I just wanna say about Alex that she seems really nice and she seems really genuine, and all the interviews that she's given, I really like her. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about her. She seems really cool. She seems really chill. She seems hardworking. She seems like she has a good head on her shoulders, and it seems like she was genuinely confused by this man, because I also think he presented in such a way where he tried to seem like really forthcoming and open, but there was something off about him the whole time, and I think she could sense it. Again, because he was so protective of his boundaries and how he wanted to be spoken to and blah, blah, blah. But he would do that dog thing like all the time to her, even though she'd be like, stop, I don't like that. He would just continue like antagonizing her. But then when it comes to himself, like he wants to be held really like in high regard and like really seriously. But he always wanted to antagonize her, which I thought was really weird from the get. So yeah, don't be afraid to just leave. When you start seeing shit like that, just be like, you know what? Fuck this. I can do better. Bye. And like, leave him hanging. Like, don't wait for him to embarrass you. It never leads anywhere good. This never ends in a happy like marriage or relationship. Conditions just continue to deteriorate. I also think like men just resent women for calling them out on things, or for like pointing out double standards or whatever, like things that these men haven't like thought about. You know, a lot of times they consider themselves like such good men until you actually call them out, and then they turn really vicious, and all they want to do is like embarrass you somehow. It sucks, because like women are just always expected to be nice and kind and flexible and accommodating, to put their own needs aside, whereas men get to act out however they want, and they don't really suffer any consequences for it. When their words don't match their actions and you stick beside them, but they still resent you just for calling them out, and they want to take revenge on you by either like humiliating you or cheating on you or dumping you or whatever, because they know that they're not good enough for you in the first place, and they resent that. So there it is, ladies, the modern day dating market. Let's see who you all have to choose from. We've got the fake feminist / progressive man who runs at the first sight of a condom, who actually can't handle women at all in their natural state, still really hates it when you disagree with him, still just thinks that he should have free access to your body whenever he wants, thinks you should go on birth control so that it can feel good for his pee-pee. Then we've got the avoidant man-child who doesn't know how to bring a pot of water to a boil, but gets really, really upset when you call him out on it, who has absolutely no goals or ambitions for himself and expects you to take over where his mom left off. And again, will get really mad at you when you call him out on it. And I'm just gonna spoil it for you now. The real thing that all of these men have in common is an extremely overinflated ego and main character syndrome. And that's the reason why they come on so strong to you and try to, you know, hook you in and trap you as quickly as possible by love bombing you. And they'll tell you basically anything that you want to hear, because they think that once they've got you in a relationship, you have to be nice to them and you have to do whatever they want because they're the prize. And ladies, I think it's time to show them. Then you also have the mama's boy. I think that's what Garrett is. I think that's why he ultimately couldn't stand moving so far away from his family, because I feel like his mom probably cried on the phone to him every night or something like that. This is definitely the man who's been given an overinflated ego by his mother, who has made him feel like he's the biggest prize and treasure and everything like that in the world, which is why he was like, oh, Nick, you've been so patient with this bitch. Like, his mom may have been the most insane and scary person on the show, actually, now that I think about it. The way that she was just couldn't stop crying when she met Taylor was absolutely nuts. Really should have been talked about more. But yeah, you have this mama's boy who's ultimately just gonna want to be close to her. And these men are also very unambitious. But he said it himself, being with a woman like this, like, made me realize I need to step up my game. Oh, okay. Always all about their proximity, just being able to copy women at the end of the day. But yeah, this is a mama's boy. This will never be your man because he's a mama's boy. He's his mom's man. Then, of course, you have your sociopath / extremely transactional man who is gonna have like no problem love bombing you and like 17 different women at the same time, saying the exact same things to all of you and being completely unaffected when that comes out and somehow turning it around on you and putting pressure on you to like make a decision or do something. They will have to be like explained very simple things to as far as like humanity. I'm not joking. Stay the fuck away from these people. They are at best going to use, manipulate, and then abuse you at the end of the day. Like physically, verbally, emotionally, spiritually. These people literally do not care about others. They do not care. And they really like to test out where the edge of things is. When given the opportunity, they're going to push things to the max. And remember, at the end of the day, they also have a ginormous ego that is very easily wounded, and it can become a dangerous situation for you quickly. If you ever embarrass them or call them out or confront them, seriously, please stay away from these people. They can be physically harmless, but it's still not worth all the whiplash that they're going to give you at the end of the day, just because for them, they are seeking a reaction. It's called supply. That's really what they're after in life, is like being able to manipulate people and like create power imbalances in their life. So please watch out for these people. Then we have your run-of-the-mill narcissistic gaslighter and man who's definitely not into women. I'm just going to say it again, has nothing to do with sexuality. Some men are just not into women as people. They do not see us as equals. They generalize us, they belittle us. And what's scary about them is when they are confronted by a woman, they feel belittled. No matter what it is, they just feel belittled that you even had the gall to like speak up to them, to like stand up to them. And they will resent you for that, thinking that you could even step to them in an argument or in a disagreement or whatever. This is not a safe individual because they will gaslight you to the moon and back. And he even tried to do that to Alex on this stage where he was like, oh, you had got back from the bars, like blah, blah, blah. She was like, no, that was a whole nother day and I have receipts. He was really trying to put her on the spot and like he was trying to be the calm, cool, collected one, an effort to manipulate Alex and the rest of us. This is also a man who's gonna only respect his own boundaries and never yours. Don't think that just because somebody has strong boundaries for themselves that means they're going to respect yours. Don't implicitly trust them on that until they have shown that to you. Stay away from men like this because they don't like you. They don't like you. Especially when they're testing your boundaries like he was with that dog thing to Alex. Like, why is he antagonizing her? Those are the little red flags that you need to watch out for and just leave right away. This is nothing good for you at the end of it. And then I think last but not least, you have your basic run-of-the-mill mid-ass cheater whose only priority and the reason that his ego is so inflated and the reason that he's so insecure at the same time, all of those things can be traced back to his peen. All he cares about, no matter how much he tries to dress like a freaking college history professor. And I swear I'm saying this in the most neutral possible way. This is genuinely an unintelligent man. He's not smart and he's not a good conversationalist. Almost every single conversation, he brought it back to sex or kink or his penis in some way, shape, or form. Every single conversation. Huge red flag. That man is going to cheat on you. And I think he has a lot of like unexplored fantasies, things that he wants to do that maybe don't involve women. I definitely think when he says he wants to be treated like a piece of meat, there's something to that. It's not related to a woman. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just saying sometimes it's a little bit of a truth there. And it's just always coming back to that. I don't know. Oh yeah, and let's not forget, like I did, about Mr. Who the fuck did I marry? Mr. Liar. Mr. didn't disclose an extremely important thing to you until you were basically hooked and trapped into the relationship. And now expects you to okie doke your way into a terrible situation so that you can, at the end of the day, still just protect his feelings. So that he can lean on you and so that he can use your body to make more babies. which is for some reason all that he talks about, even though he already has 3 children out there. What a mess. I think men like this really are that who the fuck did I marry pathological liar type. They just can't help themselves. Also, Mr. Cloak himself in religious ideology and like pray over you to distract you from the fact that he is absolutely lying through his teeth to you about everything. And you're gonna wake up in 10 to 20 years and wonder what about your life is real and what isn't. And this man will go to any lengths to convince you that he's the only one that's telling you the truth. He's eventually going to start also nagging you. The whole like, no, you can't get a man thing. And like, no, I'm not going to actually tattoo your name on my chest. Making you a little more insecure, little by little every time. This is obviously also an extremely dangerous situation because at this point, this man has lied to you about some really big stuff and been able to keep a straight face about it for a while. So you literally don't know if those are his only children out there. You don't know what other kind of debts he's in. He apparently owes child support. Like, you're just stuck with all that now. He waited long enough until he had love bombed you and led you to believe that he really is like a good person. Now he can pretty much use that to manipulate you. This man will also start to plant other seeds of like ultimately insecurity in your head by being like, you'll never leave me, right? And like, you love me unconditionally, right? Just so that he can keep playing these like sick little games with you. Because his supply comes from being able to get away with things. Like, I feel like he was like a little giddy up on that stage that he gets to put all this to bed with the woman sticking beside him and everything like that. Like, they get off on these little things. This is also definitely not a man to be messing around with. And again, at the end of the day, the one thing that all of these men have in common is an overinflated ego and the complete inability to handle criticism or being called out or the consequences of their actions. All of these men, at the end of the day, were complete cowards when it came to dealing with the consequences of their actions or being called out about something. They either played a pity card, they either played, oh, you will respect me card, or they played the whole like, yeah, I'm just a piece of shit and I deserve nothing and I'll just never talk again. At the end of the day, they're going to play one of these cards when they're confronted, and their ego is just not going to be able to handle a woman standing in her power. And unfortunately, ladies, this is what you're choosing from. And it is the reason why a lot of us have been pushing, the 4B movement and decentering men and making yourself a priority, because it will naturally weed these kinds of men out of your life. Right? So even if you are looking for a relationship, ultimately the best thing that you can do for yourself as a woman to avoid getting enmeshed and entangled with these kinds of guys is to prioritize yourself really and truly in every situation around every corner. And it means getting out at the first red flag, and it means not giving these men the benefit of the doubt. And yes, it means being skeptical and cynical. Also, the right man will never question you on that. The right man will always understand why you need to be picky and skeptical and cynical. But anytime you give men too much leeway, they end up doing you dirty. Every time you look past a red flag, they will always end up doing you dirty, because that was the test. That was the test. And it's because you don't give them enough credit also on the other side of things. We've had a lot of media pumped into our brains ever since we were little girls that men are just these like happy-go-lucky dumb little creatures, and they're not. They're very calculated. They know what the fuck they're doing. And those first red flags, those first like overstepping of boundaries, that first lie, like weird conversation, that first time you get a weird feeling, that's the test. That's the test of, can I mess with this woman? That's all they really want to know. The answer is yes, then they're going to stick around and do you dirty. That's why the advice is to decenter men. It's so that you never feel tempted to center a man in the situation instead of yourself, and give him the benefit of the doubt instead of yourself. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Say, no, I have a weird feeling about this and I have to leave. I can't be with you anymore because you make me feel weird and uncomfortable. Put yourself first, like every single one of these men do. And I promise you, your life will change for the better. Godspeed, ladies. I love you so much. Mwah.